I want to begin with a story about a police officer who was taking an exam. And there was a question on the exam that read this, and I quote, "You are on patrol in outer London when an explosion occurs in a gas main in a nearby street. On investigation, you find that a large hole has been blown in the footpath and there is an overturned van lying nearby. Inside the van, there is a strong smell of alcohol. Both occupants, a man and a woman, are injured. You recognize the woman as the wife of your divisional inspector, who is at present away in the USA. A passing motorist stops to offer assistance, and you realize that he is a man who is wanted for armed robbery. Suddenly, a man runs out of a nearby house shouting that his wife is expecting a baby, and the shock of the explosion has made the birth imminent. Another man is crying for help, having been blown into an adjacent canal by the explosion, and he cannot swim. Bearing in mind the provisions of the Mental Health Act, describe in a few words what actions you would take." So the police officer pondered for a moment, and then he picked up his pencil and he began to write these words. This is how he answered the question, and I quote, "I would take off my uniform and mingle with the crowd," end quote. Have you ever been faced with an impossible situation and you did not know what to do? Have you had one problem after the other and you had no idea of how to resolve it? Have you been faced with impossible task or an impossible issue and you had no clue of how to handle it? Better yet, where is your faith when faced with the impossible? My charge for you today is to help you to know what to do whenever you are faced with the impossible. I want to begin with the scripture coming from Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6. The word reads like this: "And without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him." I want to look at that A portion of that verse first that says, "And without faith, it is impossible to please him." Here we find the author helping us to see that there is a basic requirement when anyone desires to seek after God. When someone has a desire to seek after a God who has all power and authority in his hands, the first thing that they must be able to do is believe that he is. That he is the creator of the universe. That he is the creator of the heaven and the earth. That he is the creator of everything that exists on earth. The second thing that this individual must believe is that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. Yes, sir. Now, if you believe that he is, and you believe that he is a rewarder of those who seek him, then you must also believe that he is a sovereign God. A God that has all power and authority in his hands, that at the nick of time that he will come and reveal himself to you and give you a means of an escape. The author of Hebrews did not say that it is difficult or challenging to please God without faith. He said it is impossible. William Newell speaks to this particular verse And he writes, and I quote, "These two elements seem most simple, but alas, how many professing Christians act as if God were not living? And how many others, though seeking after him, are not expecting from him as a rewarder?" In other words, if you have no faith that God is and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, you will never ever experience the promises that God has for your life. But if you just stand and believe in expectation, in anticipation of what God can do, our God will come and open the windows of heaven and pour out blessings that you will never be able to receive. I'm talking about real faith. Real faith when you are faced with the impossible. I want to bring your attention now to Hebrews chapter 11. I want to come down around verses 29 through 31. Here's what the word says. By faith, they passed through the Red Sea as though they were passing through dry land. And the Egyptians, when they attempted it, were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. By faith, Rahab the harlot did not perish along with those who were disobedient after she had welcomed the spies in peace. The book of Hebrews was written to Jewish Christians who, like us, had never had an encounter with Jesus. But then they had some challenges that caused their progress to be all in vain, to the point where they begin to slip back into Judaism. See, they didn't realize how difficult it was going to be being a Christian in the Roman world. They started to believe that I might as well remain and practice Judaism because at least there were some privileges practicing Judaism. But after their conversion, they begin to experience persecution. After their conversion, they begin to experience false imprisonment. After their conversion, they begin to experience public humiliation. After their conversion, they begin to experience destruction to their personal property. But watch this. But they had never thought that they would be called to die for their faith. Isn't it amazing that when you decided to accept Christ as your personal Savior, when you decided to be sold out for Jesus, is when the adversity and the pain and the hurt and the challenges and the issues begin to show up on your doorstep. When you decided to turn away from the things of the world, then you found yourself, your faith had come under attack and it began to be tested at every level. But when you lived in the world, when you were doing things the way you desired, the way you wanted to, following the world's way, thinking the way the world thought, that you never experienced the mess that you are faced with today. Did you ever find yourself in that position when you accepted Jesus? That you had to fake it until you were able to make it? But I want to encourage all of the sons and daughters of God that no matter what you go through, you need to make sure that you keep real faith when you are faced with the impossible. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Watch this. The Jewish Christians' faith was not only under attack, but it was also being tested. But the author of Hebrews wanted to make sure that he sent them a word of encouragement, that they had to continue to trust God no matter what their difficult circumstance looked like. Oh, Lord, y'all got quiet on me right there. Watch this. There are 4 things that we pull from this text. 4 things. The first one is this: God allows impossible situations. Look at your name and say, impossible situations. Watch this. Watch this. The Israelites arrived at the Red Sea because God brought them there. They arrived at Jericho because God brought them there. But why did God bring them to the Red Sea and to Jericho? I'm going to tell you why God brought them to the Red Sea and to Jericho. Because God had a purpose and a plan. And he wanted the Israelites to see the capacity of his power to bring them through an impossible circumstance. Watch this. God allows you to go through impossible situations because he wants you to know that he has a purpose and a plan, that there's a lesson for you going through something that looks impossible and you're not able to get to the other side. He wants to show you that he can bring you through because he wants to work out his purpose in you. He wants to make sure that he can bring you through and work out his purpose in you. Y'all with me? Y'all got that, right? Watch this. The Jewish Christians were reminded that they were not the first, and they certainly would not be the last to be faced with impossible circumstances. Y'all got that? All right. All right. When you do this, I get you. That means you got it. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. So let me come on your street for a second. I'm coming on your block. I may not know where all of y'all lived. I know where some of you live. I've been to your house, so I know how to get there. I might not know the street. I may not know the number, but I have landmarks, so I know how to get to your house. So let me come to your house this morning. Are there some impossible circumstances facing you today that God is allowing you to go through for his purpose? So everybody say yes, right? Okay, all right. I just want to make sure y'all with me. All right, watch this, watch this. Do you find yourself being overwhelmed with some situation or situations? That you're overwhelmed with some obstacles, some problems, that you may be overwhelmed with some family members, some friends, that you may be overwhelmed with some coworkers, that you may be overwhelmed with some employer or something of that sort, that you even maybe be overwhelmed with some church folk that you're sitting right next to right now? Do you find yourself that the river that you have come up to is uncrossable? Hey, are there some mountains in your life that you're not able to get over, that you're not able to get around, that you're not able to go through? Are there some mountains? Watch this. Overcomers, at the end of the day, you need to understand that God is great, that God is awesome, that God is wonderful, that God is a rescuer, that God will give you a means of escape because he has your best interest at heart. So he knows what you need when you need it. He knows how to get you there. He knows where you need to be and when you need to be there. Watch this. He is always acting according to his perfect will and purpose for your life. And it is not about making you comfortable or convenient. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Lord. Unfortunately, there are some folk who believe that they are the center of the universe. There are some folk who believe that the world evolves around them. But they have another thing coming. Impossible situations come on your street for the purpose of God getting the glory. Yeah. Impossible situations come on your street for making sure that you give God praise, that you give him honor, that you magnify him, that you let him know how amazing he really is. That's why impossible situations come on your street. Watch this. And he wants you to see that he can bring you through, although it looks dark. But he can bring you through. That's why the psalmist says, Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Let me tell you this, sons and daughters of God, there are going to be some dark moments in your life. There's going to be some dark times in your life. There are going to be some people who are going to turn their backs on you. But let me encourage you that you don't have to fear, because he promised that he would be with you. He promised that he would never leave you nor forsake you. And you may not have a rod, you may not have a staff, but you have arms and you have hands. And all you have to do is lift them up, giving him glory, honoring him, blessing him, magnifying him, glorifying him. And that's all the comfort you need. To God be the glory for the great things. To God be the glory for his strength. To God be the glory for his power. To God be the glory for his love. To God be the glory for his peace. To God be the glory for his joy. To God be the glory. Yeah. The second thing that we pull from this text is that we must trust God's purpose. Know that God specializes in the impossible. Y'all know that. He specializes in the impossible. But we must understand that we must trust God's purpose. Watch this. The Israelites, when they arrived to the Red Sea, they had the Egyptians behind them, and they had the Red Sea in front of them. They were able to see beyond the Red Sea their extraction point, their means of an escape. But the Red Sea, this mass of water, was standing in their way. They had no clue of how they were going to get to the other side. Moses encouraged them. But the Israelites could have looked at Moses and said, Moses, it's over. It's been real, Moses. It really has been real. You have done everything that you could possibly do. But what I see in front of us, there's no way we're going to get out of this mess. The Egyptians are getting closer. And so, Moses, thank you. But it's over. It's nothing that we can do at this point. But the Israelites didn't say that. They heed to the voice of what Moses was sharing to them, with them, and encouraging them to move forward. So they continue to trust God. And we saw what God did. He divided the Red Sea, where they were able to pass through to the other side on dry land. And what did he do to their enemies? He swallowed them up. And that's what God will do with your enemies. That's what God will do with your issues. He will swallow every problem, every issue, every challenge, every pain, every hurt up. A seemingly impossible situation. And they trust in God's purpose, because if God brought them there, the Israelites believed that God must have had a purpose to bring me to a place that it looked like I didn't have a way out. But he provided. What does that say to you and me? What does that say to us? It says that we ought to trust in God's purpose for our lives and the people that he has placed in our life. Now, there are some people that we allow into our life, and they bring nothing but havoc. Y'all may be sitting next to them right now. But God, he places people in your life to help you to get to your destination. An impossible situation that is beyond your ability and control. And what did the Israelites do? They took a step back and they were amazed at what God was able to do. Is there anybody in the room this morning who may need some healing? And I want to encourage you that all you need to do is take a step back and be amazed at what God can do. Is there anybody in the room today who needs deliverance? All I encourage you to do is do what? Take a step back and be amazed at what God can do. Is there anybody in the room who needs a financial breakthrough? I encourage you to what? And be amazed at what God can do. Is there anybody in the room who needs peace this morning? I encourage you to what? And be amazed at what God can do. Is there anybody in the room who needs joy this morning? I encourage you to take a what? And be amazed at what God can do. Is there anybody who stands in the need of whatever you stand in the need of? I encourage you to take a what? And be amazed at what God can do. There's a story of a young woman by the name of Joni Eareckson. In 1967, when she was at the age of 17, she had dived into the Chesapeake Bay. And unfortunately for her, she broke her neck. And true story. And she was paralyzed. She became a quadriplegic. And she made this statement after that horrific ordeal. She said this, and I quote, "Today, as I look back, I am convinced that the whole ordeal of my paralysis was inspired by God's love. I wasn't the brunt of some cruel divine joke. God had reasons behind my suffering, and learning some of them has made all the difference in the world." End quote. Listen, it took Joni a minute to get to that place in her life, but she learned to trust in God's purpose for her life. It was more than just hoping for the best. She began to believe for the best, regardless of what her situation looked like. That's why Paul writes in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, when he says, "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good, to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." In other words, no matter what you may be going through, what it looks like, no matter what you may be feeling, no matter what you may be thinking, no matter what it is, know that every impossible situation is an opportunity for God to show up and to show out in order to fulfill his purpose for your life. Are y'all with me? All right, listen. The third thing that we pull from this text is that we must obey God's commands. Obey his commands. Listen to this. The Israelites thought they had an impossible situation when they arrived to the Red Sea. But until they got to Jericho, they realized that Jericho was even more impossible. See, it was 40 years between the Red Sea experience and Jericho. It was 40 years that they wandered in the wilderness in unbelief. And for some of us who express real faith, some of us will find ourselves, especially if we have to deal with a drought that long. Could you imagine being in a drought for 40 years of your life? 40 years. Some of us would slip right back into unbelief. Could you imagine being told that you have to walk around this wall 7 times and then blow a trumpet at the end, hoping that the wall would come down? Well, the Israelites followed God's commands, and they went around that wall, and eventually the Jericho wall came down. Watch this. Again, here we find the author of Hebrews encouraging the Jewish Christians that they ought to trust God, trust in his instruction, trust in his command, because eventually the wall would come down. Watch this. I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't know what you're going through. But I want to encourage you to keep marching around it. Keep marching around your problem. Keep marching around your pain. Keep marching around your challenges. Keep marching around those lying coworkers. Keep marching around those family members that get on your last nerve. Keep marching around the friends who said that they will be there for you. Keep marching around them. And when you're on that 6th day and it begins to weigh on you, that you start to believe that it's impossible, I want to encourage you to keep doing the right things for God. Keep following him. Keep trusting him. Keep obeying him. And never give up. Know this, that if you keep marching around whatever your situation is, your breakthrough is coming. So keep going, because the breakthrough is coming. Encourage your neighbor and tell them your breakthrough is coming, baby. Tell them again, your breakthrough. Say it like you mean it. Your breakthrough is coming. Know this. It's going to take real faith to overcome impossible victories. The 4th and final thing that we pull from this text today is this, that we must trust in God's ability. Trust in God's ability. Though Rahab was a prostitute, she risked everything by turning away from her people because she believed that God was with the children of Israel. She had no reason to believe that God was going to give Jericho to the Israelites, but she did. And she protected the Israelite spies. Rahab risked everything, her entire life, trusting completely in a great God, having complete faith in a one who promises everything. She gave and turned over her entire life to this God who flexed his power and his muscles over and over and over again. Rahab was willing to risk everything. And so I ask you the question, are you willing to risk everything and having complete faith in a God who loves you unconditionally? Are you willing to give him everything? Are you willing to have real faith when you're faced with the impossible? Are you willing to turn away from those who said that you would never make it or be nothing? Are you willing to turn away from that and put everything into your God? That's that type of faith. We need that type of faith. You know what I mean? I'm talking that type of faith that believes in the impossible before the impossible happens. That sometimes while we're on this journey of faith, we have to take some risk. But we have some believers who are too scared. They're too scared. They're afraid to take risks. Well, guess what? That is what faith is all about. It's about taking risks and then believing that God is and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him. Believing that a God who calls us in confidence that the impossible will take place even when we don't have current evidence. I'm talking about putting your complete trust in God's ability. Right now. Not the next second. Not the next 5 minutes. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not next month. Not next year. I'm talking about real faith now. And then when you don't do it, you wish you would have done it or had done it. I'm talking about real faith right now. So whenever you are faced with the impossible, it's going to take your real faith to bring you through. Do you receive that this morning?